Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopikante Radhakante Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. बोलो श्री राधे गोलोकानंद भगवान की जय।
जय
बोलो श्रीमद् भागवतम की
जय।
हरे कृष्णा रीना जी।
हरे कृष्णा।
तो कल हम लोग श्लोक 9 पढ़ रहे थे ऑफ अध्याय 22। हरे कृष्णा तरुण।
Hare Krishna.
So we are on Canto 5, chapter 22nd, and Shlok 9 is what we were reading yesterday. And this chapter is about the orbits of the planets. Yeah, हम लोग सूर्य देव के बारे में पढ़ रहे थे अभी भी कंटिन्यूअसली, हाउ सूर्य देव इज गोइंग थ्रू वेरियस नक्षत्र, और अब आगे दूसरे नक्षत्रों के बारे में लिखा गया है, राइट। तो अबाउट द मून says that when the moon is waxing, the illuminating portions of it increases daily, thus creating day for the demigods and night for the pitas. When the moon is waning, however, it causes night for the demigods and day for the pitas. In this way, the moon passes through each constellation of stars in 30 muhurts, an entire day. At 30 muhurts in an entire day, the moon is the source of nectarian coolness that influences the growth of food grains. And therefore, the moon god is considered the life of all living entities. Yeah, Surya Dev gives the light, and the nectarian coolness of moon influences the growth of food grains. He is consequently called Jiva, the chief living being within the universe. Okay, so this is what we read yesterday, and we read till 8th shlok, so we actually supposed to start from this shlok. I thought we read this yesterday, so now we'll just read the shlok again and this again, Anilji.
जी। अथ चापूर्यमाणा विश्च कलाभिर्मराणां क्षीयमाणा विश्च कलाभिः पितॄणां होरात्राणि पूर्वपक्षा परपक्षाभ्यां वित्तन्वानः सर्वजीवनिवाह प्राणो जीवैश्च केमेकं नक्षत्रं त्रिंशाता मुहूर्तैर्भुङ्क्ते। When the moon is waxing, the illuminating portions of it increases daily, thus creating day for the demigods and night for the pitas. When the moon is waning, however, it causes night for the demigods and day for the pitas. In this way, the moon passes through each constellation of the stars in 30 muhurts, an entire day. The moon is the source of nectarian coolness that influences the growth of food grains, and therefore the moon god is considered the life of all living entities. It is consequently called Jiva, the chief living being within the universe. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So for the moon day, what is written is passes through each constellation of stars in 30 muhurts. Yeah, says here nakshatram trim shata. Trim shata is 30. Muhurate bhukte, right? And it's also Sarva Jivani Vaha Prana. That's why it's called the life of all living entities. Nice. Hare Krishna, Rinaji.
Hare Krishna भैया हरे कृष्ण भैया यह एष षोडश कलः पुरुषो भगवान मनोमयो अन्नमयो अमृतमयो देव पितृ मनुष्य भूत पशु पक्षी सरीसृप विरुधाम प्राणाप्यायन शीलत्वा सर्वमय इति वर्णयन्ति. Because the moon is full of all potentialities, it represents the influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The moon is the predominating deity of everyone's mind, and therefore the moon god is called Manomaya. He is also called Annamaya because he gives potency to all herbs and plants, and he is called Amritmaya because he is the source of life for all living entities. The moon pleases the demigods, pitas, human beings, animals, birds, reptiles, trees, plants, and all other living entities. Everyone is satisfied by the presence of the moon. Therefore, the moon is also called Sarvamaya, all pervading. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So the moon there is described as Bhagwan Manomayo, Annamayo, Amritmayo. Yeah. And Sarvamaya. Right? As described here. Arun?
तत उपरिषत्सत द्विलक्षयोजनातो नक्षत्राणि मेरुं दक्षिणे नेनव्या कलायन ईश्वर योजितानि सहभिजितस्त विंशति. There are many stars located 200,000 yojanas, 1.6 million miles above the moon. For the supreme will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are fixed to the wheel of time, and thus they rotate with Mount Sumeru on their right, their motion being different from that of the sun. There are 28 important stars headed by Abhijit. Hare Krishna.
The stars referred to here are 1.6 million miles above the sun. And so they are 4 million miles above the earth. Tad uprishta dushana dilaksho yajanaka upalabhyate puratah pascha sahev varkasya sengriya manadya shamya bhidati virarka vacharti lokanam nityadhanukula eva prayena varsacharena numiyate savristi vishta bhagraho pashana. Some 1.6 million miles above the group of stars is the planet Venus, which moves at almost exactly the same pace as the sun, according to swift, slow, and moderate movements. Sometimes Venus moves behind the sun, sometimes in front of the sun, and sometimes along with it. Venus nullifies the influence of planets that are obstacles to rainfall. Consequently, its presence causes rainfall, and it is therefore considered very favorable for all living beings within the universe, within this universe. This has been accepted by learned scholars. Yeah. So that is about the Shukra. Yeah. The Shukra is considered very favorable for all living beings. Anilji?
उषनसा बुधो व्याख्यातस्तत उपरिष्टा द्विलक्षयोजनतो बुधा सोमसुत उपलभ्यमानः प्रायेण शुभकृद्यादार्काद् व्यतिरिच्येत तदातिवाता प्रायाना वृष्ट्यादि भयमाशंसते. Mercury is described to be similar to Venus in that it moves sometimes behind the sun, sometimes in front of the sun, and sometimes along with it. It is 1.6 million miles above Venus, or 7.2 miles above Earth. Mercury, which is the son of the moon, is almost always very auspicious for the inhabitants of the universe. But when it does not move along with the sun, it forebodes cyclones, dust, irregular rainfall, and waterless clouds. In this way, it creates fearful conditions due to inadequate or excessive rainfall. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So now Buddha, and Buddha is 1.6 million miles above Shukra. Yeah, which is already 1.6 million miles above Sun. Yeah, and it's very interesting that how the cyclones and dust and all these rainfalls can be predicted. So when it doesn't move along with the sun, then those things happen. So that's why if you see in the astrology, how does people forecast, right? So that astrology can look at the position of the stars, and based on the star position, the things events can be predicted, right? I mean, someone has to be really expert, of course, to predict that.
अत ऊर्ध्वमंकार कोऽपि योजन लक्ष्य द्वितय उपलभ्यमान स्त्रीभिः पक्षैरेकैकशो राशिन् द्वादशानु भुङ्क्ते यदि न वक्रेण विवर्तते प्रायेणान् शुभग्रहो अगणशः. Situated 1.6 million miles above Mercury or 88,000 miles above Earth, it is the planet Mars. If this planet does not travel in a crooked way, it crosses through each sign of the zodiac in 3 fortnights and in this way travels through all 12 one after another. It almost always creates unfavorable conditions in respect to rainfall and other influences. Hare Krishna.
So again, this is 8.8 million miles above the Earth. Yeah. So Shukra, then Buddha, and then Shani. Yeah. 1.6, 1.6, 1.6 million miles distance. Toro?
तत् उपरिष्टात् द्विलक्ष्य योजनान्तर गत भगवानं बृहस्पतिर् एकैकस्मिन् रस्यो परिवस्तरं करति यदि न वक्र स्यात् प्रयन्यानुकूलो ब्रह्मणा कुलस्य. Situated 1.6 million miles above Mars or 10,400,000 miles above Earth is the planet Jupiter, which travels through one sign of the zodiac within the period of a parivastara. If its movement is not curved, the planet Jupiter is very favorable to the Brahmanas of the universe. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So Brihaspati is supposed to be also the guru of all devatas. Yeah. And is 1.6 million miles above Shani. Right? So the sun 1.6 million miles above is Shukra. Above that 1.6 million miles is Buddha. Above that 1.6 million miles is Shani. And then 1.6 million miles is Brihaspati. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. ततो उपरिष्टा योजना लक्ष्य द्वियत्प्रातीयमानः शनैश्चर एकैकस्मिन् राशौ त्रिंशमासान् विलम्बमान् सर्वनेवानुपर्येति तव द्विर्नुवात्सरैः प्रायेण हि सर्वेश मशान्तिकरः. Situated 1.6 million miles above Jupiter or 12 million miles above Earth is the planet Saturn, which passes through one sign of the zodiac in 30 months and covers the entire zodiac circle in 30 anuvatsaras. This planet is always very inauspicious and for the universal situation. Hare Krishna.
Oh, sorry, I think I mentioned Shani earlier, so that was not Shani, right? Saturn is Shani. So that is 1.6 million miles above Jupiter, that is Brihaspati, right? So 1.6 miles, so it's Saneshchar, Eke Kashmin, Nasho, Trinchana Mashan Vilamu. So it says basically it passes through one sign of zodiac in 30 months and covers the entire zodiac circle in 30 Anuvatsaras. And generally, as we know, right, Shani Devi is considered not so good for the universal situation. That's why there is a lot of prayers which are done for the Shani Devi. Tat Uttarashmad Vishaya Ekadash Laksha Yojananantar Upalabhyante Ye Eva Lokanam Shamnu Bhavayanto Bhagavato Vishnoyata Paramam Padam Pradakshinam Prakramanti. So it's situated 8.8 million miles above Saturn or 20.8 million miles above Earth are the 7 saintly sages, Saptarishis, who are always thinking of the well-being of the inhabitants of the universe. They circumambulate the supreme abode of Lord Vishnu, known as Dhrulo, the pole star. Yeah. So above Shani Dev, like 8.8 million miles above Shani is the Saptarishis. Yeah, and the Saptarishis are going around Dhrulok. And Dhrulok is supposed to be supreme abode of Lord Vishnu. Yeah, that's where Dhruv Maharaj resides as well. Nice purport. Let's read this through.
Srila Madhavacharya quotes the following verse from the Brahmananda Purana. Jnananda Mano Vishnu Sisumara Vapusyi Atha Urdhya Lokeshu Sa Vyapta Adityayadas Tad Asrita. Lord Vishnu, who is the source of knowledge and transcendental bliss, has assumed the form of Sisumara in the 7th heaven, which is situated in the topmost level of the universe. All the other planets, beginning with the Sun, exist under the shelter of this Sisumara planetary system. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so I think see how the stars are positioned. And sorry, earlier I mentioned Shani instead of Mangal. So we have like Sun there, then we have Shukra, right? Venus, then Mercury, Buddha, then Mangal, Mars, all 1.6 miles above each. Then we have Brihaspati, right? 1.6, and then 1.6 miles above is Shani, Saturn. Yeah, and then above that, as we saw in the previous shlok, above that Saptarishis are 1. Above Saturn, or right here, right? So 8.8 million miles above Saturn, right? So all the stars are 1.6 million miles above each, but above Saturn is 8.8 million miles above is Saptarishis. Yeah, and the Saptarishis are going around Dhrulok. Yeah, and then what is also being mentioned is Lord Vishnu, who is the source of knowledge and transcendental bliss, has assumed the form of Shishumara in the 7th heaven, which is situated in the topmost level of the universe. So I think in the upcoming chapter, we will read about Shishumara, which is in the 7th heaven. Yeah. And then all the other planets, beginning with Sun, exist under the shelter of the Shishumara planetary system. Yeah. So that's how we read about some of the nakshatra. And this ends the Bhakti Vedanta purpose of the 5th canto, 22nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Orbits of the Planets. Follow Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how nicely it has been explaining about all different nakshatra. And so the next chapter is 23rd chapter, which is about the Shishumara planetary systems. Yeah, so we'll continue reading this. Anil.
अथ तस्मात् परत्रयोदश लक्षयोजना जनान्तरतो यत् दुष्णोः परमं पदं विवदन्ति यत्र महाभागवतो ध्रुव औत्तानपादिर्ग्निनेन्द्रेण प्रजापतिना कश्यपेन धर्मेण च समकालयुग्भिः सबहुमानं दक्षिणतः क्रियमाण इदानीमपि कल्पजीविनामा जीव्या उपास्ते तस्येहानुभाव उपवर्णितः. Sukadev Goswami continued, my dear king, 1.3 million yojans, 10.4 million miles above the planets of the seven sages is the place that learned scholars describe as the abode of Lord Vishnu. There, the son of Maharaja Uttanapad, the great devotee Maharaja Dhruva, still resides as the life source of all the living entities who live until the end of the creation. Agni, Indra, Prajapati, Kashyapa, and Dharma all assemble there to offer him honor and respectful obeisances. They circumbalance him with their right sides towards him. I have already described the glorious activities of Maharaja Dhruva in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. So Sukadeva Goswami is, of course, explaining it to Maharaj Parikshit that 10.4 million miles above the planets of the seven sages, Saptarishi. Yeah, and Saptarishi is 8.8 million miles above which star?
From
Saturn.
Saturn, right? The last one was Saturn. So above Saturn, 8.8 million miles is Dhruv, is Saptarishis. And above Saptarishis, 10.4 million miles is Dhrulo. Yeah, is that no, sorry, is the place that learned scholars describe as the abode of Lord Vishnu, which is the Dhrulo. Yeah, and as we know, the son of Maharaj Uttanapad, the great devotee Maharaj Dhruv, and we read about Maharaj Dhruv and which meditation, on which mantra Maharaj Dhruv was doing the meditation, you remember?
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Yeah, the famous, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya is the meditation which Maharaj Dhruv did, and Narad Muni gave him the mantra. Yeah, and it says there is the life source of all living entities who live until the end of the creation. Like if you remember in the second canto when we were reading about the universe, like there is a pralay after every Manu, yeah, and also after the Yug cycle, and there is a big pralay at the end of the day of Brahma, right? And if you remember, the one day of Brahma is how, or Brahma is how long? How
4
long?
billion.
Yeah, 4.2 billion, right? Yeah, 4.2 billion solar years is one day of Lord Brahma. And there is a big pralay after that. But so, and then Lord Brahma is $350 trillion. But what happens during those pralayas is like the loks below Saturn loks, like below Jan and Tap lok, gets destroyed and again created, right? But the loks above that, right, like Jan lok, Tap lok, and the Dhruv lok, they still remain. They still remain till the end of the creation. And it's also mentioned in the Dhruv lok, Agni Dev, Indra Dev, and we also read positioning of Indra Dev. I don't know if you remember, I think it's Devdhani, right? When we're reading, like Devdhani is the place where Lord Indra resides. And his positioning was given like on the east side of Meru Parvat, right? And then in the south, we saw where the Yamraj resides. That's the Dharma. And then we saw the positioning of Agni Dev and everyone, right? So, but they all assemble where? In the Dhrulo to offer him the respectful obeisances. And they also circumambulate to Dhrulok. Okay, so interesting to know, right? Rinaji?
स हि सर्वेषां ज्योतिर्गणानां ग्रहनक्षत्रदीनामणिमिषेणा व्यक्तरहंसा भगवता कालेन भ्राम्यमाणानां स्थाणुरिवावस्तम्भः ईश्वरेण विहितः शश्वदवभासते. Established by the supreme will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pole star, which is the planet of Maharaj Dhruv, constantly shines as the central pivot for all the stars and planets. The unsleeping, invisible, most powerful time factor causes these luminaries to revolve around the pole star without cessation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so I think we can see Dhruv Tara at times, right? Okay, right? It's the central pivot for all the stars and planets. Sachin?
यथा मेढी स्तंभ आक्रमण पशवः संयोजिता स्त्रीभिः सवैनर्य यथा स्थानं मण्डलानि चरन्त्येवं भगणा ग्रहादय बर्हियोगेन कालचक्र आयोजिता ध्रुवमेवावलम्ब्य वायुनो दीर्यमाणा आकल्पान्तं परिचक्रमन्ति नभसि यथा मेघाः शेनादयो वायुवशाः कर्म सारथयः परिवर्तन्ते एवं ज्योतिर्गणा प्रकृति पुरुष संयोगा गृहीताः कर्म निर्मित गतयो भुवि न पतन्ति. When bulls are yoked together and tied to a central post to thresh rice, they tread around the pivot without deviating from their proper positions. One bull being closest to the post, another in the middle, and a third on the outside. Similarly, all the planets and all the hundreds and thousands of stars revolve around the pole star, the planet of Maharaj Dhruv, in the respective orbits, some higher and some lower, fastened by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to the machine of material nature according to the results of their fruitive acts. They are driven around the pole star by the wind and will continue to be so until the end of creation. These planets float in the air within the vast sky, just as clouds with hundreds of tons of water float in the air, or as the great Siena eagles, due to the results of past activity, fly high in the sky and have no chance of falling to the ground. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. And a nice purport. So let's read this. Tarun?
According to the description of this verse, the hundreds of and thousands of stars and the great planets such as the Sun, the Moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter are not clustered together because of the law of gravity or any similar idea of the modern scientists. These planets and stars are all servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda or Krishna, and according to his order, they sit in their chariots and travel in their respective orbits. The orbits in which they move are compared to machines given by material nature to the operating deities of the stars and planets, who carry out the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by revolving around Dhruvaloka, which is occupied by the great devotee Maharaj Dhruva. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 5.52 as follows. Yak chakshur esha savita sakala granam raj samasta suramurtir asesa tejah Yasya Naya Brahmati Sambrata Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purusam Tam Aham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the preeminent Lord, the Supreme Person of Godhead, under whose control even the sun, which is considered to be the eye of the Lord, rotates within the fixed orbit of eternal time. The sun is the king of all planetary systems and has unlimited potency in heat and light. This verse from Brahma Samhita confirms that even the largest and most powerful planet, the sun, rotates within a fixed orbit, or Kala Chakra, in obedience to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This has nothing to do with gravity or any other imaginary laws created by the material scientists. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, this is mentioned in Brahma Samhita. What is Brahma Samhita? Now, what is Brahma Samhita?
The prayer of Lord Brahma worshipping Lord Vishnu.
Right. The prayers by Lord Brahma, yeah, worshipping Lord Govinda. Yeah, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamham Bhajami. And in that prayer, like this is the prayer is done when Lord Brahma, when Lord Vishnu gives darshan to Lord Brahma, and then Lord Brahma does the prayers of Lord Vishnu. And this prayer has almost, I think, 35. So the Brahma Samhita is huge. It has like 100 different adhyas, right? But the important part of that is like that 35, 40 sloks, which we also did. And before we started Srimad Bhagavatam, we actually read Brahma Samhita, yeah, which is the Lord Brahma's prayers. And Lord Brahma is then praying to Govinda, right, the Lord Govind, that under his control, the sun and all the other planetary systems, yeah, actually are situated. They rotate within a fixed orbit, or in the Kal Chakra, in obedience to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is what is mentioned here, right? And then also, as we read earlier, now you know the distances, right? Like sun is, it was mentioned what, how much? 4 million miles above Earth. And then I think the Shukra Venus was 1.6 million miles above the sun. Then Mercury was Buddha, 1.6 million miles above Shukra. Then Mangal, Mars, 1.6 million miles above Mercury. And then Brihspati, 1.6 million miles above Mangal. And then above Brihspati, 1.6 million miles is Saturn. Yeah. And then above Saturn, some 8.8 million miles is Saptarishis. And then above Saptarishis, 10.4 million miles is Dhruvlok. Right? See how like everything is situated, right? Continue reading this. Aniji?
Yeah. Material scientists want to avoid the ruling government of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore they imagine different conditions under which they suppose the planets move. The only condition, however, is the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All the various predominating deities of the planets are persons, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also a person. The Supreme Personality orders the subordinate persons, the demigods of various names, to carry out his supreme will. This fact is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.10, wherein Krishna says, Maya dhyaksena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetu nanena kaunteya jagad viparivar tate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. The orbits of the planets resemble the bodies in which all living entities are seated, because they are both machines controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, and this continues. Let's read this Rinari.
As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 18.61, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridayase Arjuna tisthate brahmayana sarva bhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjun, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the maternal energy. The machine given by material nature, whether the machine of the body or the machine of the orbit or Kal Chakra, works according to the orders given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and material nature work together to maintain this great universe, and not only this universe, but also the millions of other universes beyond this one. The question of how the planets and stars are floating is also answered in this verse. It is not because of the laws of gravity. Rather, the planets and stars are enabled to float by manipulations of the air. It is due to such manipulations that big heavy clouds float and big eagles fly in the sky. Modern airplanes like the 747 jet aircraft work in a similar way. By controlling the air, they float high in the sky, resisting the tendency to fall to earth. Such adjustments of the air are all made possible by the cooperation of the principles of Purush, which is male, and Prakriti, female. By the cooperation of material nature, which is considered to be Prakriti, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is considered the Purush, all the affairs of the universe are going on nicely in their proper order. Prakriti, material nature, is also described in the Brahma Samhita 5.44 as follows. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sachin?
सृष्टि स्थिति प्रलय साधना शक्तिर एका चयेवा यस्य भुवनानि बिभर्ति दुर्गा इच्छानुरूपम् अपि यस्य च चेष्टते श गोविंदम आदि पुरुषम तम अहम भयामि. The external potency Maya, who is the nature of the shadow of the Chit, spiritual potency, is worshipped by all people as Durga, the creating, preserving, and destroying agency of this mundane world. I adore the primeval God, Lord Govinda, in accordance with whose will Durga conducts herself. Material nature, the external energy of Supreme Lord, is also known as Durga, or the female energy that protects the great fort of the universe. The word Durga also means fort. This universe is just like a great fort in which all the conditioned souls are kept, and they cannot leave it unless they are liberated by the mercy of Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord Himself declares in Bhagavad Gita 4.9, Janma karma cha mi divyam evam yo veti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mama iti so Arjuna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Now, what does that mean? Is one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities, does not upon leaving the body take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. O Arjun, thus simply by Krishna consciousness, by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be liberated, or in other words, one can be released from this great fort of this universe and go outside in the spiritual world. Yeah. So I think I just read one more paragraph here. Pause, Tarun.
It is also significant that the predominating deities of even the greatest planets have been offered their exalted posts because of the very valuable pious activities they performed in previous births. This is indicated herein by the words karma nirmita gataya. For example, as you have previously discussed, the moon is called Jiva, which means that he is a living entity like us. But because of his pious activities, he has been appointed to his post as the moon god. Similarly, all the demigods are living entities who have been appointed to their various posts as the masters of the moon, the earth, Venus, and so on, because of their great service and pious acts. Only the predominating deity of the sun, Surya Narayana, is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maharaj Dhruva, the predominating deity of Dhruvaloka, is also a living entity. Thus, there are two kinds of entities: the Supreme Entity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the ordinary living entity, the Jiva, Nityanam, Chetananam, Katha Upanishad 2.2.13. All the demigods are engaged in the service of the Lord, and only by such an arrangement are the affairs of the universe going on. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So basically, what is being mentioned is out of all the nakshatras, Surya Narayan is the extension of Lord Vishnu, right? But of Narayan, and everyone else has achieved those positions by their pious activities, right? By the karma, by the fruitive activities. As we have been reading, like if somebody does like a lot of good karmas, they can keep going to the higher planets, right? So, but at the end of the day, it's all engaged in the service of the Lord. Yeah. I think we are going to pause here since it's 10:58, and we'll continue reading from Shlok 4, and again, which describes all the orbits of the planets and how they are running. Okay. So, and this week we have been hearing about Surya Narayan, Lord Surya, right? Surya Dev, and we will just do the arti today of Surya Narayan. Yeah.
शुभकारी स्वरूपा तुम हो त्रिगुण स्वरूपा धरता सब ही तब ध्यान ओम जय सूर्य
बोलो सूर्य भगवान की
Jai.
So I think nice reading, right? A lot of knowledge base, and how our astrology and panchans. See, like centuries ago, they already given what is the position of all these stars going to be, right? How is that possible? Like after 1,000 years, what will be the position of Venus, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, right? And how they will be rotating with what speed? Everything is given, right? And even somebody can go back 1,000 years and bring out what the position of the stars. So highly regulated everything is, and so nicely described. So good to read, and it's Wednesday today, so we'll take a long weekend break and see you back on Monday. Yeah. So Monday 10 p.m. EST. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा गजेंद्र जी, मैं नेक्स्ट वीक ट्रैवल कर रहा हूँ, तो आई विल मिस नेक्स्ट वीक
Oh, अच्छा.
इन लंदन, सो टाइमिंग्स
अच्छा.
वोंट वर्क.
Oh, क्या बात है. And then coming back on the weekend? No?
I'll be back on Thursday, but by then I'll miss the Monday through Wednesday sessions.
Oh, fast trip, huh? Chalo.
Yeah. Leaving on Friday, back on Thursday.
Nice. Chalo, enjoy your trip.
Thank you. I'll catch you guys after that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Chalo, Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna, everyone.